all of those are signals. The actual things is all of us are uneasy. We've been uneasy since the financial crisis and probably since 2000. Anybody involved in financial markets has had a sense of unease. We've also had a sense of optimism about technology. And here are those things meeting. Here's the technological solution to the unease that we've been feeling. And so I think that's why it's resonating. And people come from different angles, whether they're technology, this is an amazing future, or like, this is all fucked, I need something to help me, the life raft. All of those people are coming together. That's quite a super narrative, and I think it's dead right as well. I mean, this is why, when I look through the other side, I think this is a fourth turning moment. I think the entire financial structure of the world is in flux. And if this moment gets seized upon properly, everything will change. Now, it doesn't mean we'll come up with a perfect answer. Maybe Bitcoin ends up being the solution at the very end, but we've got a lot between here and the very end to go. I mean, that's a couple of decades. Okay, so the gateways that I'm looking for on a very macro perspective is, okay, we've seen the fintech layer being built. We've seen the banks kind of go, okay, this is going to happen. What do we have to do? We've seen capital coming into the space to allow these people to build stuff. We've seen various different platforms and different solutions to different problems, and solutions to problems that aren't problems either. So we've seen that. Okay, so that's great. That's where we are now. So what's the next big catalyst? Next big catalyst in price is institutions, but they're not what's driving this space. The next part, because it's the disruption of money that's going on. The next part is what the central banks are screaming at everybody, is they are going to change money. And my belief in that is they are going to change money, not only just in the basket that we talked about, or some way, shape or form, but they're also going to change monetary and fiscal policy forever. They're going to blend. So central banks will be able to do direct stimulus. Now, that means the rise of behavioral economics, which has been used in Silicon Valley for a long time. Facebook's built on it, network effects, Metcalfe's and all, they're all the same thing. That is going to come into this space. So that means they can penalize you with negative 1% interest rates because you're a saver, and give a student positive interest rates, or they could do anything they want within programmable money. Now, Benoit Cœuré from the ex-ECB, now the BIS, talks about this openly, that the central banks are going to go down two different paths. Some will just have a digital currency, which is just digital fiat, but it allows much easier transfer, and others will do programmable smart money. And clearly, people like the ECB are very interested in programmable smart money because they've got a banking system that doesn't work. Velocity of money around the world is zero, or less than 1. So monetary mechanism doesn't work. So you need to change everything. I mean, they're literally going to change everything, I think. It's also, look, if I was given the same set of issues, let's say we're not going to get rid of central banks and go to Bitcoin overnight, and I'll come on to that process. So let's say I wanted to solve the problems that we've got now. This is genius. This is literally genius. Because if you have big data sets and behavioral economics, you can do some really, really powerful things. Now, the flip side is it's terrifying because it can be used nefariously, and governments are governments and they will edge towards that. We get that, right? I'm not saying that it's good, but it is also extremely good. If we had this in place through this crisis we just had, or the last crisis, we would have solved it so much faster. What interests me, again, it matters not what my opinion is. It's, is it going to happen? And what do we do? And again, people just get angry about it. I'm like, you can get angry all you want. If it rains tomorrow, you can get angry about it, but it's raining. Whether you like it or not, deal with what is. This is coming in one way, shape or form. So, okay, we're now in the central bank digital currency world. We're 5 years out. That's when it's going to happen within 5 years, right? So the world's changing. It's a big explosion. The central banks have all said, we want the private sector to build out the fintech layer. Happy with decentralized finance, happy with Bitcoin. We just regulate people on and off ramps, make sure everybody can use it. Let's go, right? That's what the stage has been set. So then what's the next stage? Well, this is all fiat money still. And governments are governments, so they're going to use it for nefarious means over time, and we're going to get a bit more uneasy again about it. So what are we going to do? Well, there'll be some Latin American countries bored of having currency crisis after currency crisis say, well, you know what, I'm going to put Bitcoin into my reserve, because Bitcoin at this point is probably a 10 trillion plus asset. You know, that's when I think it's worth $1 million. So 5 or 6 years time. So some country, Costa Rica, goes, you know, we're going to hold our reserves in Bitcoin, and then they get rewarded for it. Like Michael Saylor's just been rewarded for putting it into his company, right? It's the same process. And behaviorally and game theory will tell you that everybody else will start doing it. So then you have hard currencies versus other currencies, and it puts pressure on those other current. And so that's the process that can lead to hyper-Bitcoinization. That's how every family office lives. Every single family office that has done that for 50 years. They have a base currency where they have their expenses or their cash flow. Let's say they still own a business. Many of them will choose gold as a base asset, and they'll switch around currencies accordingly for interest rate differentials or other advantages. So that is normal. It's just not normal for average people because the friction costs are too high. But for wealthy families, it's normal. For hedge funds, it's normal. For asset allocators, it's normal. So yes, I think that's right. I think gold I've always talked about as a personal reserve asset, but it's clunky by actual physical definition. It's clunky, right? But Bitcoin, as you say, I got my wallet, I keep everything in Bitcoin, I flip it in and out of where I need it, pay my taxes, I have to go to the store doesn't use Bitcoin because they're in the tax system, fine. That's no problem. And I think that is part of the world that we will adopt it because it has uses for us. But that's the same use that the Costa Rica or whoever adopts it for the same reason. And it's that process of choosing it as a base currency for everybody that happens over time behaviorally, just because the winner takes all, essentially. But yes, people are going to get used to this. And again, they have no understanding what's coming. People just don't understand the amount of tokenization that's about to happen. One thing I've learned is you need to think more about human behavior and incentives and why people are doing things. So as you alluded to, why is it so tribal? It's actually a throwback to 2016, when there was a lot of these projects rising. Nobody knew who was going to win. Everyone put their money in them, and you want your own to win, right? It's like going to the horse races and saying, sports teams, right? And that war is still being fought, and it's a false narrative now. Because Bitcoin's dominance as what it is now established. It's clear, it's institutionalized, that's over.